Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story. Hey readers, welcome back to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, where today I am taking a deep dive into erotic romance books. I'm going to be talking about this romance category, what it is and isn't, and why I cannot stand that people call it porn, and then I'm going to share some of my favorite erotic romance books. So let's dive into the episode. All right, erotic romance, right? I thought it was fitting to dive into this romance category as we lead into Valentine's Day, since it's a holiday of love, right? But what really is erotic romance? Because I think a lot of people just make assumptions when it comes to this category of romance books. And since this piece of it is obviously on my mind, let's just start with saying that no, it's not porn, even if that's what your prissy neighbor might think when she finds out that you love reading romance or erotic romance. It's a legit romance book genre, right, that many readers devour and which has honestly exploded in popularity since the craze of 50 Shades of Grey releasing and all of those movies. But I hear all the time, well, isn't all romance erotic romance if it has sex in it? No. Just because a book is about love or even has sex in it does not make it an erotic romance or even a straight up romance book. Many romance books are clean or even chaste books, quite frankly. And erotic romance isn't just a book with graphic sex, which, I mean, let's be real, can be a component of any book, honestly. So erotic romance, according to Romance Authors of America, are romance novels in which strong and often explicit sexual interaction is an inherent part of the love story, character growth, and relationship development, and could not be removed without damaging the storyline. So think of it as the development of a romantic relationship through sexual interaction. And since it's romance, all erotic romance books also have a happily ever after ending, which is the best part about romance, in my opinion. And that's why I get really bent out of shape when people just lift their nose about erotic romance and judge readers by saying, oh, you're just reading porn, you're just reading smut, right? No, I mean, porn is defined as depictions in movies, books, or whatever media that is designed to arouse the viewer, right? Plain and simple. But that's not the goal of erotic romance. It may happen, but it's not how it is defined. Again, it's defined by using sexual interaction as the main component of what drives characters together and fosters their relationship, which ends with a happy ending. Without it, the story and the relationship development would be lost. So next time you are smut shamed for reading any type of romance or especially erotic romance, just share that bit of education, would you? Usually the person doing that shaming is someone super repressed and probably could get a lot out of reading erotic romance. So just saying, But that's totally fine, right? If it's not somebody's cup of tea. I love romance because it can honestly meet people wherever their comfort zone is. So if you want to chase romance, you can find it. You want a super clean romance? We got those too. Want something a little spicier? Yep, you got it. And of course, the super steamy erotic romance books are in the genre too. There's honestly just too much judgment in the world as it is, and we really don't need more judgment about the type of romance books we read. I think I was on a bit of a soapbox there. Sorry, but I love reading erotic romance and have no shame in admitting it, and I'm excited to share some of my favorites in this episode. For these recommendations, I'm going to try and offer a few different types of erotic romance books because there are so many different subcategories and topics within erotic romance. For example, you could read an erotic romance that focuses on BDSM practices, which is where, 50 Shades falls, or you can read one where people meet at or go to a sex club. There are menage and sharing erotic romances, reverse harem erotic romances, sex kink and taboo erotic romances. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. One of the first erotic romance books that I read is by an author that I'm pretty sure uses a pen name and has only written a few books and none in recent years, which I'm kind of sad about. But I talk about this book all of the time because I loved it and I think it's a great short book for someone who just wants to dip their feet into erotic romance. And that is the book My Personal Bad Boy by Bethany James. It's just over 100 pages, so a short but complete read that touches on a lot of different scenes that you can be exposed to in erotic romance. It has sharing, dom-sub relationships, sex parties, exhibitionism, and most importantly, illustrates how sexual interactions between the two main characters are what fuels their ultimate relationship and happily ever after. I can't tell you how many times I've read this book, honestly, but it starts off with Nicole, who's babysitting on New Year's Eve, and she realizes she wants something different for her life and she wants to gain more experience. So that night she goes online into a message board and types, "I want to be bad," basically putting out an ad for someone to corrupt her and guide her into new experiences that she wants for herself. And Wes is the person who replies, stepping up to the task to be her personal bad boy. So their first interaction is her going to his house where he just happens to be hosting a swingers party. And they hardly talk, honestly, but end up getting it on with each other and some other people. And once they're done, he sort of escorts her to her car and it's like, bye-bye. Pretty much giving her the one night stand she wanted and showing her that sex can be just sex, right? And nothing more. So they end up meeting up at various points for more corruption, quote. So you can really see their relationship as it develops because, of course, they slowly start to get to know one another through all of these hookups and is really focused on their sexual encounters, and taking those out of this book would really just kill the story. Hence, it's an erotic romance. I loved Nicole in this because she just went after what she wanted without judgment, and Wes didn't come at her with any judgment or shaming either. I think what I liked most, though, is how you can see their connection really bloom as their hookups continued and how they just fit with one another. This book had great pacing, great characterization for such a short read, and was super hot, so definitely check out My Personal Bad Boy. Now, before I go on with my list, I should say these books, plus some others, are on my book list on shereadsromancebooks.com, on my list of best erotic romance books for the virgin reader. So after hearing about these books, definitely go check out that list for even more recommendations that I have for you. Now, the next erotic romance is another one that I read pretty early on when I started venturing more into this category of romance, and it's Pillow Talk by Maya Banks. Maya Banks is one of those romance authors that I instantly think of when it comes to erotic romance. She, of course, writes across the genre, but when I was first dipping into erotic romance, I knew that her books were a good place to start. And Pillow Talk is one that I can remember and have reread again over and over through the years. So I would recommend this one if you're interested in erotic romance that explores fantasy play, or one that involves sharing in menage scenes. The couple in this book share their darkest fantasies one night, which they later play out together and with friends. So it too is a shorter book, only about 180 pages, but man, does it really pack a lot in it and give a full story. So as I said, it focuses on Zoe Michaels, who's in a committed relationship with her boyfriend, Chase. And one night they're talking about their fantasies that they have. And then, so the rest of the book continues on with them playing out those fantasies for each other. And Zoe's fantasies happen to include their other two roommates, Brody and Tate, who work with Chase as firefighters. So if you have a thing for firefighters, then that's just sort of an added bonus for reading this book. So their fantasies range from exhibitionism to scenes with sharing and multiple partners, picking up a stranger, voyeurism, and even pretend abduction. That's a lot for a short book, but it works, and it was really, really good. Now, another favorite of mine that I think about often and would highly recommend and do recommend all the time is Wicked Envy by Sawyer Bennett. Now, this is a book in her Wicked Horse series, which focuses on a sex club, the Wicked Horse. I loved all the books in this series and her Wicked Horse Las Vegas series, but this one is my absolute favorite because it was a really, really good friends to lovers story that just happened to revolve around a sex club. Plus, it was really steamy in the best of ways, so yeah, highly recommend it, especially for those interested in books about sex clubs as well as those who want to read about a menage relationship, because I think she does a really great job exploring that in this book. All right, this book is a story about 3 people, Avril, Dane, and Andrew, who have been friends since college and who now work together at the same company. Dane is a member of the Wicked Horse Sex Club, and he invites Andrew to go with him one day. Then Avril discovers that her boyfriend of several years is cheating on her, so she says she wants to go with them too, and she kind of gets hooked and wants to continue. So what ensues in this book is the 3 of them hooking up at the club and later outside of it as a menage, but it becomes apparent that Dane and Avril are really starting to establish feelings for one another. And that is honestly what makes this so good, because it explores what it means to move from friends to lovers in a menage relationship and how that can change feelings for each person. So, such a great read, totally steamy, just well written, and just one of my favorite all-time erotic romance books. So check out Wicked Envy. Moving on to another all-time favorite erotic romance book that is a romance is Want Me by Nev Wilder. Man, I freaking love this book. I had never read a Nev Wilder book before, and I can't even remember how I found this book, honestly. But man, after starting it, I was hooked and devoured her entire extracurricular series since, which incidentally will have a new release later this year, and I am beyond excited for that release. Now, this is one extremely hot erotic romance that is set in college and is a story between 2 roommates. It's an erotic romance book because it's all about the sexual experiences and sexual experimentation between Eric and Nate as their relationship unfolds. From the start, it's pretty much one sexual encounter after another, starting with an oops run-in at the house where they both live. Nate is clearly letting off some steam in his room while studying for a calculus exam when Eric walks in on him unannounced. Only Eric doesn't turn his gaze away right away, enjoying the view, and Nate finds that he enjoys it too. Thus starts off a story of sexual discovery for Nate, who realizes he's not so straight after all. All right, so highly recommend that one. Gosh, I could talk about Want Me all the time, but just the different scenarios they have and where they end up having sex around the college and, various places. It was one extremely hot book. Okay, my next book is an erotic romance book that focuses on BDSM. I'll be honest and say I've never read 50 Shades of Grey, and I honestly really don't plan to. I watched the first movie and realized that this one really isn't for me, so I can't recommend it, not having read it, but a BDSM book that I can recommend and that I think is a really good one that explores what BDSM is all about in a good first, exploratory way is 3 Hard Lessons by Nikki Sloan. I love this novel because it revolves around a new couple who just happen to start exploring BDSM and the role that it can play in their relationship. Peyton, our heroine, she has worked in a pleasure club So she's had her fair share, of adventure with multiple partners. And in one day, the club walks in Dominic, and he honestly just wants to talk with her. Now, paying $30,000 is a lot of money to just talk, mind you, but more does end up happening, and a connection is really made between those two. So much so that Peyton ends up going to stay with him for a while he moves to Japan for work. And so while they're there, they start to incorporate some more BDSM into their relationship. And that's where things really get good, because I loved reading Dominic's perspective, as he was kind of this more, innocent, kind guy who was exploring his more alpha dominant side. And to help them out, he even enlisted the help of a BDSM mentor. And those scenes, honestly, got pretty hot. Now, Nikki Sloan writes a lot of different erotic romances, but I think that this erotic romance novel gives the perfect introduction to BDSM, as I said, and is great for the newbie to this genre and category of romance. So there you have it. You're now set with 5 amazing erotic romances that you can read leading up to Valentine's Day, or really any time of year. They're just that good. Give them a try before you write off erotic romance, or if you're interested to see the variety that the category offers, then, because there's so much to it, these are great ones, or great places to start. I am going to round out this episode with a quick draw from my A Year of Reading Romance card deck, which is a deck of 52 cards, each with a reading prompt and each with a romance category or trope on it to help you pick your next read. If you're in a reading slump or want to change things up a bit, or to explore more of that the genre has to offer, I do sell this card deck on shereadsromancebooks.com. So let me shuffle it up, and I'm going to see what we're going to pick for today. All right. Ooh, look at this. Today's pick is one of my favorite romance tropes, enemies to lovers. So, gosh, hard to pick. Just one recommendation for that trope. I love it. Love it. Okay, I'm going to go with Truce by R.L. Mathewson, one of my all-time favorite romance books. Definitely an amazing enemies to lovers storyline, but it's also kind of a historical romance. I love this book. It's probably my favorite book that she wrote. Cannot recommend it enough. Now, on the card, the reading challenge is to read a paperback. So that should be pretty easy for you to achieve. Gosh, any book, honestly, can be in a paperback. So let me see. I would recommend Neon Gods by Katie Robert. If you have not started that series, I think it's incredible. It's sort of a fantasy, but not really. It's sort of like a contemporary fantasy that weaves in Greek mythology, which I really love. She's going to be having at least 2, if not 3 new releases in that series this year. So if you haven't started it yet, get going with book 1, which is Neon Gods. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode on erotic romance. Hope you found some great books to add to your TBR list. As always, thank you for listening, and happy reading, because life is better with a love story. That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.